These are the stories topping the hour. U.S. President Donald Trump says he'll invite North Korea's Kim Jong-un to the U.S. if their summit in Singapore is a success. And as for the location, he says he'll start with the White House. The two-day early voting period for South Korea's June 13th local elections kicks off at over 3,500 polling stations nationwide. The turnout rate so far, 1.24% as of 9 a.m. We have our correspondent on the ground. The G7 is sharply divided ahead of their big meeting in Canada. The leaders of Canada and France stand together, vowing to confront President Trump on trade. They say the other members will do the same. We start this morning with U.S. President Donald Trump's latest comments on his upcoming Singapore summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, now just a matter of days away. He said his administration wants a clear and verifiable path to denuclearization, and something that he wants strong action down that road. And the U.S. president says he'll invite the North Korean leader to the White House if next Tuesday's summit goes well. Our Jae-in starts us off.
Could the decades-old Korean War finally be coming to an end? That's certainly a possibility. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Thursday during a joint news conference with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, President Trump said he and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un could sign an agreement to end the Korean War at their June 12th meeting in Singapore.
We could sign an agreement. As you know, that would be a first step. It's what happens after the agreement that really is the big point. But yes, we could absolutely sign an agreement. We're looking at it. We're talking about it with them.
With the historic Pyongyang-Washington summit now just 4 days away, Trump says he's all ready to go, adding he could invite the North Korean leader to the U.S. if the summit goes well. Should there be a follow-up summit, it will take place at the White House and not his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, as recently reported.
Maybe we'll start with the White House. What do you think?
Experts say a visit by Kim to the U.S. would serve as a powerful symbol of normalizing ties between the former Korean War foes. However, despite the positive outlook, Trump says he's still willing to walk out of the summit if things don't go as planned.
So I am totally prepared to walk. It could happen. Maybe it won't be necessary. I hope it won't be necessary to walk, because I really believe that Kim Jong-un wants to do something that is going to be great for his people and also great for his family and great for himself.
Meanwhile, the U.S. president added his administration's maximum pressure campaign on the North is still in effect. And if the term is mentioned after the summit in Singapore, it's a signal negotiations did not go well.
Maximum pressure is absolutely in effect. We don't use the term anymore because we're going into a friendly negotiation. Perhaps after that negotiation, I will be using it again. You'll know how well we do in the negotiation. If you hear me saying we're going to use maximum pressure, you'll know the negotiation did not do well, frankly.
Will we finally see an end to the 68-year-long war on the Korean Peninsula? The answer to that may come after one of the most anticipated summits in modern history on June 12th. Jae-in, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the Trump administration is going into the June 12th meeting in Singapore fully committed to getting Pyongyang to denuclearize. He also stressed that the U.S. expectation is that North Korea is going to abandon its nuclear weapons, promising the regime that if they do, the country will have a brighter future in terms of its economy, security, and being brought back into the international fold. Trump's top diplomat also said he will fly to South Korea the day after the summit to meet with senior officials from Seoul and Tokyo. Pompeo will then fly to Beijing to meet with Chinese officials to inform all the key players in the region on the results of the Kim-Trump meeting. And with the venue for the historic summit confirmed as the Capella Hotel on Singapore's Sentosa Island, the focus is now on where the leaders will be staying in Singapore. It is highly believed that President Trump will stay at the Shangri-La Hotel, but it's less clear on the North Korean side. Observers, however, say that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may be staying at the St. Regis, Singapore, after reports his de facto chief of staff was seen there. Meanwhile, Singapore's Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan arrived in Pyongyang on Thursday on an apparent mission to prepare for next week's summit in Singapore. Balakrishnan is expected to fine-tune details on security and protocol arrangements for the summit. And the Singaporean government, gearing up for the summit, says it'll temporarily lift trade sanctions against North Korea from June 9th to the 14th. In an order made in the Government Gazette Act on Thursday local time, Singapore said the suspension put in place last year will be put on hold for goods originating from or bound for North Korea, with its summit with the U.S. just now days away. It also stressed that the suspension would only apply to delegates importing or exporting goods, quote, for the purpose of the preparations or conduct of the summit. A team of 14 South Korean officials left for the Kaesong industrial complex early this morning to check the proposed site to establish an inter-Korean liaison office. The two Koreas agreed to set up the office at their high-level talks last Friday, but because the complex has been closed for over 2 years, a prior inspection needs to be done to renovate the site. The South Korean team is led by Seoul's Vice Unification Minister Chun Hae-sung and includes officials from the presidential office and a few private sector firms. North Korean officials will also help to check the facilities and the equipment. After years of applying and being turned down, South Korea has finally been given the green light to join an influential intergovernmental organization of railway networks, all made possible after Pyongyang gave its approval. And according to our Kwon Jang-ho, now this marks the first step towards the possibility of taking a train all the way from Seoul or Busan to Western European cities like Berlin, Paris, and London.
The Organization for Cooperation Between Railways approved South Korea's application for membership on Thursday. South Korea now joins an organization of railway networks that covers much of East Asia and Eastern Europe, including the Trans-Siberian, Trans-China and Trans-Mongolian railways. According to Seoul's Transport Ministry, the decision was announced at a meeting in Kazakhstan after a unanimous vote from the 28 member states. That includes North Korea, who had previously blocked South Korea's membership since Seoul began applying in 2015. But it seems the rekindling of relations between the two Koreas has led to Pyongyang to change its stance. The Panmunjom Declaration signed at the Inter-Korean Summit in April stated that the two sides agreed to adopt practical steps towards the connection and modernization of the railways and roads. Plans to reconnect the railways have been in the works for more than a decade, with President Moon especially pushing it as a priority, as it could provide further connections to rail networks in China, Russia and the rest of Europe, helping South Korea cut down on shipping costs and time. However, hopes of catching a train from Busan all the way to London are still a long way off. Much of the Trans-Korea railway network needs to be reconnected and renovated at an initial estimated cost of $35 billion, which includes the Donghae line in the east. And any such development could violate current UN sanctions on North Korea. Still, South Korea's membership in the Intergovernmental Organization opens doors to future possibilities and shows North Korea's intent to foster better ties. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
The International Olympic Committee has organized a friendly table tennis match on June 23rd in Lausanne, Switzerland, between Olympic medalists from the two Koreas, China and Japan. IOC President Thomas Bach says the event, arranged to mark Olympic Day, is, quote, another step by Olympic sports to promote dialogue on and around the Korean Peninsula. Officials from the respective National Olympic Committee say top-level athletes from the four countries will take part in the mixed table tennis exhibition in celebration of sport's unique ability to build bridges and cultivate sportsmanship. Turning to our coverage of the upcoming June 13th local elections here in South Korea, President Moon Jae-in and his wife, First Lady Kim Jong-soo, cast their ballots early this morning. With it, he becomes the first sitting president to vote early since the system was first introduced back in 2013. Now, the top office says President Moon's decision was aimed at boosting voter turnout, which in the case of local elections can be as low as 50%. Staying with it, early voting for the 2018 local elections in South Korea officially kicked off early this morning, 5 days prior to the actual June 13th election day. Citizens who won't be able to cast their votes on the actual election day can visit any of the more than 3,500 polling stations around the nation today or tomorrow and vote for their new representatives. Now, for more, we're going to go live to our Kim Mo-gyun, who is live for us at the Seoul station. Mo-gyun, are you seeing many of the voters file through?
Hi, Simon. Yes, as you can see, numerous citizens have been waiting to exercise their democratic right to vote. It's been very busy around here since early morning when voting first began at 6 a.m. Korea time. Now it's a little past 10 a.m. here in Korea, and more than 875,000 voters have already casted their ballots out of 42 million eligible voters, which amounts to more than 2.04%. The National Election Commission says there are 3,512 such polling stations nationwide, and citizens who won't be able to cast their vote on Election Day can visit any of these stations today or tomorrow from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to vote. For this year, citizens can cast up to 7 votes to select some 4,000 candidates for administrative, legislative, and educational posts, including 17 metropolitan mayors and provincial governors. Some living in selected districts can additionally vote for lawmakers, as the by-elections to fill 12 vacant seats in the National Assembly is also underway.
Now, Mo-gyun, we've been seeing a lot of campaigns encouraging citizens to vote early, with South Korean President Moon Jae-in also voting this morning to ramp up some of the support. But why? What's the significance of voting early?
Yes, Taemin, like you said, candidates and politicians from all parties have been encouraging citizens to vote early, as because of the influence it has on the overall voting turnout, and because of concerns that the turnout could stay low this time, as many people have been focusing on the North Korea-U.S. summit scheduled a day before the election day on June 12th. So lawmakers from the Democratic Party of Korea promised that 5 of their members will dye their hair blue if early voter turnout surpasses 20%, while Liberty Korea Party chief Hong Jun-pyo said that he will dance to the party's campaign song if the turnout is higher than 30%. Back to you, Taemin.
All right, Kim Mo-gyun live for us at Seoul Station, covering the early voting period for the June 13th local elections. Now, staying with the elections in the country, though, through the polling stations are open for those who cannot vote on June 13th. Candidates are still in campaign mode, rallying for support like there's no tomorrow. So far, though, the ruling party has a commanding lead. Our Kim Min-ji with the details.
In final opinion polls allowed to be released ahead of the June 13th local elections on Wednesday, the ruling Democratic Party of Korea appears on track to sweep to victory. The ruling party is in the lead in 14 of the 17 metropolitan cities or provinces, including Seoul and even traditional conservative strongholds such as Ulsan and Busan. The main opposition Liberty Korea Party, which initially aimed to win at least 6 areas, is in the lead in Gyeongsangbuk-do province, while the southeastern city of Daegu falls within the margin of error. An independent candidate is leading in Jeju-do province. Up until election day, the ruling party says it will be doing all it can to secure its supporter base in conservative strongholds. The main opposition, meanwhile, is trying to reverse the trend by implementing a new 2-track strategy, with the party's leadership focusing on policy making, such as promoting solutions to boost the faltering economy, while party lawmakers are supporting campaigning in their respective districts. But with less than a week left, it's unclear whether any variable will be big enough to turn the tables.
The Inter-Korean Summit and the North Korea-U.S. Summit have had a big impact on the local elections, and as we can see, the positive developments have been reflected in the polls. On top of that, the opposition bloc hasn't been able to bring up an issue to outweigh that attention. What's different in this election is that voters want to show their support for the government rather than necessarily choosing the best candidate.
Initially, it was believed an opinion-rigging scandal involving a ruling party member and the struggling economy could erode the popularity of the ruling party. And now, with prospects gone for a possible merging of candidates, the remaining variables are voter turnout and swing voters. A glint of hope for the main opposition is the bloc of voters referred to as shy conservatives, those that don't tell pollsters that they support the main opposition Liberty Korea party.
There are bound to be people like this, as we saw in the presidential election last year, but the problem for the main opposition party is that it's positioned itself badly. They're supposed to be an alternative to the ruling party, but they haven't really been able to cut their ties to the impeachment of a former president, and all they're doing is criticizing the government. If they'd supported the positive results while criticizing where the government has come up short, they'd stand a much better chance.
Should the outcome of the local elections fall in line with the recent polls, especially in traditionally conservative regions, some say the political dynamics in the nation could see a seismic shift.
Although it is slightly in the lead, the main opposition party faces a difficult situation even in Daegu and Gyeongsang-Bukdo province. If it loses Busan and Ulsan, it could be the end of the party as we know it.
Now it's down to the voters. Will they throw their support behind the government's peace initiative? Or will they look past North Korea and assess the government's successes and failures when deciding who gets the vote? Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And there's been widespread belief that the so-called heat-not-burn electronic cigarettes are safer than conventional ones, as they heat tobacco to a temperature high enough to create vapor, not smoke. But that may not be true, as health authorities in the nation announced that there's no reason to believe these relatively new devices are less toxic. Our Ko Ryun-hee with more.
It's been a little over a year since so-called heat-not-burn electronic cigarettes came onto the Korean market, and they've caught on quickly among smokers. According to the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, as of this April, heat-not-burn products had a cigarette market share of almost 10%. However, the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety released analysis Thursday, saying there is no evidence that these products are less harmful than conventional cigarettes. Together with outside researchers, the ministry studied 3 popular e-cigarette products: the Lil by local tobacco company KT&G, the Glow by British American Tobacco, and the IQOS by Philip Morris. In them, it found 5 substances classified as first-level carcinogens by the International Agency for Cancer. However, the amounts were only between 0.3% and 28% of those found in conventional smokes. The amount of nicotine was similar to that found in ordinary cigarettes, between 1/10 and 1/2 of a milligram. The ministry added that 2 of the products, though, contain more tar.
Some of the heat-not-burn electronic cigarettes contain more tar than regular ones. This means these e-cigarettes could contain other toxic substances not found in regular tobacco.
But the report was met with a backlash from manufacturers who've called it meaningless. They say it's not appropriate to simply compare amounts of tar, because tar is produced when tobacco is burned, which their devices don't do. This isn't the first warning from the government about heat-not-burn cigarettes. The Health Ministry announced last month that 12 new written and graphic warnings will be put on heat-not-burn cigarettes starting this December. The government is also working on a law to make manufacturers submit a full list of ingredients and toxic substances in the heat-not-burn cigarettes and disclose the information to the public. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
And now for a look at stories making headlines around the world. The leaders of Canada and France say they will use the upcoming G7 summit to confront their U.S. counterpart Donald Trump on trade, urging other G7 members to do the same. For more on this and other news around the world, we turn to our Do Aram at the News Center. So Aram, what did the 2 leaders have to say?
Well, Sam, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and French President Emmanuel Macron took a confrontational tone towards Trump on Thursday. They were speaking side by side on Parliament Hill in Ottawa a day ahead of Friday's G7 summit in Canada. Macron suggested Washington's protectionist measures were leading to what he described as a new U.S. hegemony.
The United States are naturally a great economic power. But if they continue towards a form of isolationism, brutal hegemony, of distancing themselves from their own history, from their own values, from the role they play in international organizations where they are leaders, by deciding to remove themselves, that will be bad for the United States of America.
Both leaders also said President Trump's recent decision to impose tariffs on steel and aluminium imports was illegal and also harmful to the American people.
It is American jobs which will be lost because of the actions of the United States and its administration.
Trump fired back by tweeting France and Canada were hurting the United States with unfair trade practices and imposing what he called massive tariffs on American imports. The Trump administration, meanwhile, has announced that it has struck a deal with Chinese telecom giant ZTE to end crippling U.S. sanctions. The agreement, announced by Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross on Thursday, includes the firm paying a $1 billion fine to lift a ban on doing business with American suppliers. ZTE is also required to overhaul its leadership within a month. The company paid a fine last year for evading U.S. sanctions by doing business with North Korea and Iran. It also angered U.S. regulators after it lied about disciplining the employees responsible for the sanction breach. Thursday's deal has angered also U.S. lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, and they are working on legislation to roll back the agreement. Guatemala's National Disaster Agency says it is suspending search efforts in areas devastated by the eruption of the Fuego volcano, the death toll of which now stands at 109. The agency said Thursday that conditions are too dangerous for rescue workers to continue their search for survivors. Nearly 200 people are still missing, which will likely bring the final death toll even higher. The announcement angered residents, some of whom took matters into their own hands by conducting their own search operation in the lava-ravaged area. Meanwhile, Guatemala's public prosecutor said it's opening an investigation into whether evacuation protocols were followed properly in Sunday's eruption, which caught many residents off guard with little time to evacuate.
Good morning. People across the South will continue to swelter under a searing heat wave today. In fact, Daegu and parts of Gyeongsang-do provinces have been under heat wave advisories for 3 days now, and UV rays will be stronger in the southern provinces as well. So Gyeongju and Daegu will have sweltering afternoon highs at 33 degrees Celsius, and Seoul will have highs 3 degrees lower than Thursday at 26 degrees. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So southern parts of South Korea will have weather that feels more like August today, while North Korea will have rain or sunshine depending on the region. The long-awaited monsoon season starts in Mumbai, while northern India, including New Delhi, will continue to have dangerous heat into next week. Meanwhile, heavy rain is forecast for much of Australia throughout the weekend. Over in New York and Washington, D.C., there will be a few clouds in the sky, so there will be plenty of sunshine and comfortable daily highs. As for South America, Bogota will see frequent showers for next 4 days. Taking you to Europe, unseasonably warm temperatures in Berlin will also ease on Sunday with showers. Lastly, to Africa, the intense heat wave will continue into the weekend in Cairo under strong sunshine. And that's the weather update for now.
And that'll do it for us at the hour on Arirang News. Thanks as always for watching, and goodbye for now.